When I was talking to the founding members, with people who were responsible for making Jepson become one of the things they said was, it was difficult in some ways because the academic wheels grind so slowly. What was it like having an idea to establish a leadership school and recognizing that implementing that in a college or university might take years?
Well, I think any of us that have spent a lot of time around higher education, and those of us who either in our working lives or in our years after being students in those institutions understand that much of the greatness of those institutions is they're not susceptible to change every day.
Right.
They really live through the centuries. And this venerable old institution called the University of Richmond is no different. Mm-hmm. And I knew it was going to be maybe well received, maybe not well received.
Right.
But they used to have an academic gathering once a year over in the business school, and they would have the faculty in full regalia, and they would have some poor guinea pig who had either gone here or knew of the place who was going to lecture to that crowd. Uh-huh. And lecturing to a crowd of academics, maybe 200 or 300 of them in full regalia, was a little bit intimidating. So I figured, well, you've got to say something. You can't just stand up and go, dubba-dubba-dubba-doo. So I thought, well, I'll spring the idea of the leadership school on them. And I remember challenging the faculty to be different, to be better, mm-hmm. to be at the front of the pack. And I was shocked to see the reaction. It was, we will be at the front of the pack. We will take the challenge. What do you got up your sleeve? And what I had up my sleeve was the School of Leadership Studies. So we unfolded that in that convocation, and then the work began. And the work was less arduous than I thought, but I only saw the front of it. The back of it was the faculty and those here who were reviewing the idea and trying to digest the idea of teaching leadership when leadership in a form was only taught really at the academies.
Right.
And so I hung out a little incentive. And the incentive was, if you do it, I'll help pay for it, and it's not going to be cheap. So the incentive got the whole idea over some rough pebbles in the road many times. And it got us to the beginning. And I'm really pleased to say that my ideas and my hopes for the school were soon supplanted by professionals who took the dream and the idea to a new and higher level. So it's worked well both for the university. It's worked incredibly well given my ideas and how they have blossomed. And really importantly, it's worked well for the students who've gone there and made better both as individuals and as those who look at the world through academic eyes as well. So it's a win-win-win all around.
You must have had a vision for what you thought a leadership school would look like.
Well, I did have a vision. I was fortunate enough to be in student leadership roles when I was here, and I only attended 3.5 years because I transferred from a Brand X. And I wanted, and I experienced so many good things by being a student leader, so many things that required me to be honest with myself and honest with my time, careful with my time. And I thought, I've received a great education just through leadership here, but it's been something that I've kind of stumbled through from one meeting to the next. And I think if I had been prepared in an academic way, I'd have been a heck of a lot better and made more success in everything that I had undertaken, being an academic as well as leadership.
Right.
So I fostered the idea to myself of why not a School of Leadership Studies that gives a person or the students the opportunity to look at life through how can I make it better rather than, oh, I've got to get through this class, or I've got to get through this job, or I've got to get through this day. And the more I thought about it, the more it took form. And I tried it here at the university, because where else would you go that would be able to do so much with an idea concerning leadership and education? I was on the board of another school at the time who thought it was a great idea and really wanted to do it badly, but who doesn't love their alma mater? I mean,
Right, that was what, it seems kind of obvious, I think, to anyone who loves their alma mater, but what brought you back home? You could have done this in a countless number of institutions. What was it about the University of Richmond that it might work here?
well, I think when you're first accepted here, they put something in the letter of acceptance that you sniff, and it begins to change you. And then when you matriculate here for your first class, they bend you over and they give you a full shot of that stuff, and it stays with you for life. And to be a student here is to love the place. To be a student here, you learn that it's here because those who have come before you have supported it. It's here because it wants to make you a better person. So, I mean, to come to the University of Richmond is a love affair. It never leaves you.
Most of the people that I've interviewed who were responsible for helping found the Jepson School and getting the inner workings off the ground have said pretty much the same thing, that, Mr. Jepson was integral to what the school became, but that you let people who knew how to get it done do what they needed to do. How important is delegation in getting something like this off the ground, recognizing that some people donate money and they want their hands in everything? And many of the people that I interviewed said Mr. Jepson was willing to delegate getting the school off the ground to people he knew would do it in a way that represented something that he envisioned.
When you want to build a house, you better call a carpenter.
Right.
Because if you think you're going to do it yourself, you might get something built, but it's not going to be what you wanted, and it's not going to be all that it could be. And if your car stops running, you better find a good mechanic. I had been in business for some time, and in a successful business, you learn to delegate. And so I had that attribute and that experience from business that I brought to this idea. And to bring it to the university meant to me, I want you, with all of your wisdom gathered by all of your faculty and supporters through the years, to make this all that it can be. And I was thrilled to see that it was more than I thought it could be. It became something much bigger, much more important, and I think much more lasting in terms of its imprint on young lives who go over there and experience it, and will show that experience in all that they do for all of their lives.
How much interaction have you had with the Jepson School over the years? Do you feel like you've been integral to its development as not only the person who was the brainchild of this, what back then was an experiment, but has now moved from an experiment to something very real?
Oh, it's something very, something very real and something very copied. But I think, I've loved to have funded it and created it from an idea standpoint, and to see what the professionals have done with it is very satisfying. The trick is to let the professionals keep being professionals and keep your hands out of the pie, or you're going to mess it up.
Right.
And I don't want to mess it up. I just want to enjoy its development and the essence of what it is, an institution of education that changes lives. So I hope I'm wise enough to get as close enough as I can to enjoy it, but stay far enough away that the professionals don't feel they're hampered.
It's always difficult to ask people. I've got to ask the proverbial legacy question.
Oh, ask it.
right. Like, I mean, what do you want the legacy, not only of the Jepson School to be, but your involvement in the Jepson School?
Oh, I've said earlier, I want to change lives for the positive. There's growth in all of us. There's an ability to be more than we are in all of us. And our mission at that school is to, in some important way, make a change in young people's lives so that when they leave here, they view life a little bit differently. They view it through the lens of people that know they have talent to make things better. They have talent to help people in their lives reach their goals. And if we can do that on a continuing basis, 100 students a year, pretty soon we'll have made a big dent in a lot of people's lives all over the world.
I can remember in recent years living through 2 recessions. I think there's a lot of skepticism nowadays about business and whether or not it's ethical. Like, how important to you was making sure that there was an ethical component in the Jepson School and thinking about leadership, not only as a relationship between the 5 schools in the business school and the University of Richmond, but in making sure that people who came through Jepson understood that there was a strong ethical component to getting an education in leadership studies?
That was a big risk, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And it wasn't a foregone conclusion.
It was, it was a really big risk. So when early on, when we were here at the university, way before the school was ever a reality, the school was a reality on paper, and we hired people to begin to put a curriculum together. And I got to know those people, and they all met the test. They were ethical. They, so to speak, drank the Kool-Aid and said, we can change lives in a positive way. And when you're talking about changing lives in a positive way, you don't do it unethically. You don't bend the rules. You don't cut the corners. You want these young people to have the best education they can get, and the best education they can get and how to help others lead their lives and change institutions. So ethics is a foregone conclusion. If you think about, is this ethical, it's a bad idea to begin with.
Right.
So we've never had that problem that I'm aware of. If we have, it's well hidden, thank goodness.
Right. I think about some of the names of people who were originally affiliated. Rich Morrill, they all spoke fondly of you. I had to ask you this question: how did you get the Norman Schwarzkopf? I mean, I was a junior in high school, by the way, during.
Well, you're just a young pup.
During Operation Desert Storm, and I remember hearing that Norman Schwarzkopf gave the inaugural address for the Jepson School. Was there a personal relationship between?
Oh, sure.
Right.
Sure. Norm I met the day that he officially left the Army. He was invited to a sporting clay shoot up in New Hampshire, I believe. And the person that was putting on that shoot called me and said, and I had accepted as well, it was people that thought they were good shots. Norm taught us all that we weren't. But we went to the shoot, and the person that put it on called and said, you're flying up, would you stop in New Jersey and pick up Norm Schwarzkopf? He has been invited and accepted. And I said, I'll be glad to. I didn't know him at all, except like all other Americans by TV,
right,
and what he had done for us in the Middle East. So I stopped in New Jersey and picked him up. And what a great guy he was. You know, he was just like the guy on TV. I mean, he was personable, he was smart, and he was a little cautious about the civilian world because everybody was kind of grabbing, wanting a piece of Norm.
Sure.
So I didn't grab it all. I just said, get on board and have a Coke or something stronger if you like. He had a Coke. So we went to this sporting clay shoot and all had a good time. And I took him back home to Florida, and we became close friends on that weekend. And so I asked him to be on the board of my company, and he accepted that. And we were very close friends until he died. He was a terrific guy and loved the idea of leadership. I mean, what 4-star general in the Army doesn't know about leadership? Right. And so I told him about the School of Leadership and asked him if he'd be the inaugural speaker. And he would love to do that. And he did. Introducing him that day was an interesting event because I was asked if I would introduce General Schwarzkopf, who had been in every living room in America for months.
Right.
So I stood up and I said, I have a great job today, and that's to introduce our guest speaker. The crowd started applauding and stood up for 20 minutes. And I said, well, I've done my job. I'll just sit down. And Norm stood up, and of course the cheering went on. But America was very grateful to him for what he had done in the Middle East and how he did it. And I think his affiliation with the school lasted until his death.
You know, there are several what we call founding members, professors. What was your relationship like with Joanne Chula and Tom Wren and Gil Hickman?
Well, I met both of them before the school was ever formed.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned earlier that we had brand new faculty, just 2 or 3, that we got together and said, we have a school now and it's funded, but we don't have any curriculum. The eyes rolled like, oh, no curriculum, huh? I said, would you rather have somebody else's curriculum or create your own? Mm-hmm. And of course, the answer was affirmative. We'll create our own. So I watched them sit and write the curriculum for the first text at the School of Leadership. They were passionate about leadership. They were passionate about being able to start something that would forever have their imprint on it. Mm-hmm. And it does today. So it was fun to watch them. And I remember coming to the first meeting to meet the new faculty who were really had no classes to teach because they had no books.
Right.
So they wrote the books, and those 3, it was 3 of them, got together. It presented me with a mug that had emblazoned on it the Jepson School of Leadership. I still have that mug. It's a reminder of the beginning, which was, so this is how you start a college.
Where does it rank? I mean, in a long, illustrious career of accomplishments, where does the creation and maintenance of the Jepson School rank on your list of accomplishments?
Well, that's an interesting question, and the answer will be interesting. Without some success in business, the school would have been an idea with no attachment to reality. Mm-hmm. So accomplishment of success in business was absolutely essential to make that idea a reality. And then, of course, the idea itself was reminiscent of this august institution and what it had done for me and what it enabled me to do for myself. Mm-hmm. And that's really much at the heart of the creation of the School of Leadership. So business is important. The idea was important. But having my alma mater say, we'll do that, that was really important. And if you look at people today, let's take Claiborne Robbins, who is a
giant.
Right. He makes the giants look like midgets.
Yeah, Robitus.
he is a giant here. And Claiborne, with all of what he did in business, what's he remembered for?
The Robbins School.
The Robbins School.
Right.
The University of Richmond and his success. Mm-hmm. This school owes its continuance after 1969 on Claiborne Robbins. Right. And what an institution he built and helped succeed. If I'm known for anything, I think I'll be known for the Jepson School of Leadership.
That's a brilliant point. You know, and even successful business people, sometimes people don't know precisely how they were successful in business.
It's almost always the case, because in business we live by rules and we live in a society that's pretty structured. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have the SEC looking over public companies. If you're going to do something in a public company, you got to do it within the framework of rules. Mm-hmm. And when you live within those rules and you're successful, it's something to be proud of. But then you dig into the heart and the mind of the individual. And the heart and the mind will be greater than success in business. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happened here in 2 instances with Claiborne and myself. We'll be remembered for what we did at Richmond, not because of our business successes.
I'm writing this history and reflection of 25 years plus of a school that in some ways people weren't sure what it was going to be. Now everyone knows precisely. It's not just the Jepson School of Leadership Studies within the context of the university. This is a household name in leadership studies around the world. Did you see it becoming as well recognized for the study of leadership?
Well, I'll answer that in two ways. Of course, I am comforted that 600 institutions in the United States have created leadership programs since we started the Jepson School.
Right.
And that kind of flattery is very comforting. But that kind of flattery means that there are 600 schools out there that intend to be better than we are.
Right.
And as a consequence, that little pin in the derriere is always pushing, be better.
Right.
Stay in the front. Don't fall back in the pack. Make this institution, the School of Leadership in Richmond, better than it is today, as good as it is.
Right.
Keep running harder, because there's more to do out there, and there are dreams to make real.
Right.
So, and I think the faculty and the administration, both here at the university and the school, exemplify that. They feel that. And our last little arrow that we've shot, maybe not a little arrow, but a big arrow, is the creation of the Oxford Scholars Program.
Right.
And we said, why not give our students a full ride to Oxford if they can get in for 1 year, and that ride will be tuition, room, board, and incidentals for living expenses. We thought that rounding of the education would be just a great addition to the education they received here. And sure enough, Oxford embraced the idea, the students here have embraced the idea, and all that we'd hoped for with that addition to the School of Leadership graduates has materialized, and we're so successful. They are so successful, and we are successful in our efforts to make the Jepson School a better place. It's a giant step.
It's huge. I think, in any good historical analysis, in some ways, is a referendum on the present, or at least a question on how we got to now. Where do you see us? Where do you want to see us in the future?
That's a ringer of a question. And it's a ringer of a question because when I thought about what I wanted the School of Leadership to be when we started it, it's grown way beyond my dream, way beyond my dream. So I'll answer today something that will be a dream today that I hope will be obsolete by the time you and I sit again together. And I hope that Jepson in the future will have people that are so in graduates that are so well respected and so accomplished, they'll be able to take what they are and who they are and make the world in general more interesting and more accomplished. The small step and start today, I hope we go way beyond that. And my dream today is to have Jepson scholars at Oxford in much greater number. And first they have to be accepted at the oldest university in the free world.
I've been there.
Which is no insignificant place. And to have our graduates accepted there and adding that to their litany of talent is a great dream. And I have a feeling they're going to do better than I even think they're going to do. But that's the dream today. But of course, then there's a bucket over here that I have to rummage around in and come up with another dream that will add to the polish that this place puts on people that come here and leave here.
Right. So the last question I have to ask is, how far has Alice been to the Jepson School of Leadership Studies?
She's an inspiration. I would say in one word, she's an inspiration. Everything that we have done, we have talked about together and done together. And the things that she aspires to do, I beat the drum for her and hold her up as an example of how to live your life and make others around you better. And I think she's done the same for me. So what we do, or what each of us does as an individual, we do as a team. I think Alice is very proud of what we've done here. Of course, she's very proud of her own alma mater and what she's been able to do there. But I think we both want to say life was better because we were there. And when you've been married as long as I have, you know, you get to know your partner pretty well. It's really not a partnership anymore. It's almost a melding into one. So, you know, what I am is because of Alice, and what Alice is probably because of Alice.